Hello, listeners, and welcome to ToolBox Talks at the Site Shed. My name is Matt Jones, and I am the facilitator, the man with the mic, so to speak. And you are joining us today with my co-host, Shayne Connolly, and we are conducting a series on occupational health and safety. Made simple, that's right. It's OH&S Made Simple. That's the topic of the series. Now, whether or not you're joining us for episode 1, 2, or 3, I'm sure you're going to get a lot out of this. So if you've missed any of the previous episodes, make sure you go back and check them out. Shayne is an absolute expert in this field, and he is from a company called Tradie Safe, and they basically help businesses implement occupational health and safety documentation through the majesty of the cloud. So it's a 3-part series. The first one, we're learning a bit about OH&S. The second one, we're talking about capturing and recording OH&S documentation. And then in the final episode, we're talking about where the future of occupational health and safety is going. So it's a really good series. It's very applicable, I would say, to any of our listeners. So make sure you tune in. And if you enjoy it, leave us some comments in the show notes or in iTunes, Stitcher, and or SoundCloud. Thank you.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to ToolBox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hello and welcome back to ToolBox Talks. My name is Matt Jones, and I'm joined in this 3-part series, OH&S Made Simple, by my co-host, Shayne Connolly from Tradie Safe. Shayne, welcome back to the microphone.
Hi, Matt. Nice to be back. Hopefully we can clear up some more OH&S related issues for people today.
Absolutely. Look, if any of the listeners out there missed the first episode, we sort of gave a bit of an overview around OH&S, and it was pretty informative, actually. I learned a lot myself. So if any of you guys missed that, go back and check it out, because what we're going to be talking about in this episode is certainly going to be is going to follow on from that last one. So in this episode, we're talking about capturing and recording OH&S documentation. And I know from my experience in the past as a tradesman, that is an absolute friggin' nightmare. So I am all ears when it's coming to this one, Shayne. So why do we, obviously, let's start at the basics. Why do we need to capture OH&S information, and how long do we need to capture it, or how long do we need to keep it?
So in that sense, it's very much like the tax man. 7 years you need to keep your records for. And as far as I always explain it to people, if you have to stand in front of a judge and explain yourself, if you don't have a copy of the ToolBox Talk or the SWIMS or whatever the PSO is, as far as they're concerned, it doesn't exist. Right. And that's the way to approach how you record your OH&S information, because it needs to be a real document or a real recording in the cloud. It can't be something that you say, yes, we talked about that. That isn't good enough in terms of the law.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what's tax? Is it 7 years or something?
Yes, that's right. 7 years you need to retain this sort of information for, which seems like a long time. And that's one of the reasons why we have good records. So and I have worked for companies where people have come back with for work cover and things like that 2 or 3 years later, and you have to go back and dig through all the documentation and make sure that everything was in place. So it does happen. It's rare, but it does happen.
Yeah, okay. So what are some of the typical information that we would need to capture, from an OH&S standpoint?
So some of it's really simple. So some of it's information about when you induct that employee into your business. So you need to capture that basic information. You need to have training records to show that you showed those people how to do the job or how to use that piece of equipment or whatever it might be. You need to capture information like the risk assessments you do, so the safe work method statements or job safety analysis, whatever technique you're using. You need to capture inspections. So if you have a scissor lift or an EWP, for example, you need to have those records of inspection on those pieces of equipment. So there's a whole range of different things that you need to capture depending on some of the stuff that you actually use. So
yeah, I know some of the main ones that we used to focus on were obviously ToolBox Talks, which we used to conduct, I think it was weekly with all my guys, and then it was bi-weekly on site. So with the builders would typically hold like a bi-weekly meeting. We used to do tool registers, so we used to have to provide a register of all the tools that we used on site, and they all had to be tagged and tested.
Yes, there's a whole range. Things like fire extinguishers, they need to be tested and tagged. The list goes on. I mean, it's not It does depend on the business that you're in, obviously, and some smaller businesses have a little bit less, but there is certainly a long list of stuff that you need to record. ToolBox Talks is one of the most important because it tends to be the place where you talk most about things that happened recently or changes to the work site. You know, there's a big hole over there now, don't walk over there. You know,
Right.
And if you don't record that kind of information and someone does walk over there and falls in that hole, that's the kind of stuff that they're going to be looking for when they investigate it.
Yeah.
And if you've got a record of a toolbox where you talked about that, then that's a degree of protection for you as a business.
Yeah. Yeah, no worries. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about how do we capture this information? Now, obviously, TradieSafe, does a lot of cloud solutions. So
Yes.
I'm very interested to hear about this. So what's protocol these days? I mean, obviously, where I used to run around on site with gigantic A4 folders full of full of every document under the sun. Now I imagine it's all available on my iPhone.
Pretty much.
Let's talk about that.
One of my recent clients, they had up to 10 folders on each project that they ran, full of paper. And but that's the way of the past. So we actually work with a company called DoneSafe, and they have a really great cloud solution where you can literally become paperless. Everything from recording your toolbox talks, your inductions, all of your tickets, like you're working at heights, for example, or your high-risk tickets for forklift.
Yeah.
All of that information is available right there in the cloud. So,
okay.
And you can take it anywhere with you, like you said, on your iPhone. You can even sign off on safe work method statements and email them off to a client if you want to. So
wow.
It's really got to that point now where, and this is sort of, I have a technology background before I got into safety. So it was a bit of for many years I worked in safety thinking, God, there must be a better way to do this, because I'm not a fan of paperwork myself.
Yeah.
And so when I found DoneSafe at the start of last year, it was like a revolution for me.
It's DONE safe.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. .com.au is it or .com? Or?
Just .com
okay.
if you want to see their website.
Yeah.
And it's made a huge difference. I mean, there are a lot other cloud platforms out there, and there are some programs, like Tradify and ServiceMate that have forms and stuff built into them. But the DoneSafe platform for us is the winner because it ticks all the boxes that you need to tick.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So, I mean, that would be such a. There must be a million people out there listening to this podcast. Well, I wish there was a million. There'd be a lot of people out there listening to this podcast right now. And they would just be going, what? You're telling me I can get all this information on my phone? Like, that's amazing. But I know from experience with any cloud-based solution, it does come down to a lot of the time the setup and the implementation. Is it hard setting this stuff up? Is it hard to get it, set up for you and your team?
Well, it's not for us. I mean, that's
right.
What we do on a daily basis. And look, I have worked with clients who have managed to be able to do most of it themselves, but it's not the simplest thing to go from, especially if you go from having no system to having a digital system. It can be a little bit daunting. So the software itself the platform is really easy to use, but you do need a little bit of know-how to get yourself set up in the first place. And that's usually what we do for our clients, is just that initial painful data entry part where you've got to put everything in and set it all up and make sure it says all the right stuff.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's cool because, I know for people that are non-technical, that is an absolute grind. And, I know even for us, with the web design company, like, if you're trying to, you'll be waiting a lifetime to get information off some people, especially relating to content.
I understand.
That's
part of it. We know what information to capture. We know what to ask you for and what needs to go in there. So, but really, at the end of the day, after it's set up, if you can use Facebook, you can use DoneSafe.
Right.
It's really that simple.
Yeah. Okay. And is that product? Is it like a subscription based model, or how does that work?
Yeah. So it works around how many users you have. So if you've got 5 people in your company, then you pay for 5 people. If you've got 40 or 50, then that's what you pay for. So, and it's a monthly subscription platform. Yeah.
So, is there a typical type of company that would adopt a solution like this, or is it really non-biased to anyone?
I think from what we've seen, it's people who know they've got to do safety. So they've already accepted that premise, and they want to do it in the most efficient way they can because they don't want it to actually cost them money. One of the complaints I always get is that, safety costs me money. And if you do it properly, it should make you money because it's preventing you from getting in trouble and possibly having to pay expensive fines. But it shouldn't impose on your business. And that's where a solution like what we do with Tradie Safe and Done Safe is that it makes that process much simpler. So it doesn't, less than 20 minutes a week.
Yeah, wow. So is it also, could you use a similar solution, if you're a big company? I mean, I've got one of my really good mates, he's very high up in Lend-Lease, and he's just saying the OH&S compliance is just out of this world at that level. Like, it's just crazy. Yes. And I wonder if, a product like that or a solution like yours would fit a business of that sort of size as well as obviously the smaller businesses.
Well, I tend to work with clients less than 50 employees, but I know that Done Safe is currently used by places like Suncorp and some other rather large companies around Australia. So, and that's one of the beauties of the product, actually, is it scales really well. Sometimes, platforms can get a bit clunky if you're only 3 or 4 users, but this one actually works remarkably well, regardless of how many users you've got.
Yeah, okay. All right, cool. Well, look, I'm pretty content with that why don't we talk a little bit just quickly about some scenarios where you may need to capture data that relates to OH&S. Something that comes to mind immediately for me is photographs. So
yes.
Now, this is something that we never had to do because I've been out of the game for a bit longer than that, but I imagine now, if you do see an issue on site, it would make sense just to take a photo of it and apply it to a file or something. How would that work?
Well, the beauty of this platform with Done Safe is that you can capture, if you're using your phone or a tablet, you can attach a photo to any kind of record inside the system. So whether it's a learning record or an incident or a hazard or a training record, you can attach a photo to anything. So obviously a picture tells 1,000 words. And if you're doing a site inspection and you find something that needs to be fixed, then taking a photo of it is the easiest way to explain that to people. So I encourage that all the time because it's so hard to explain some things that taking a photo is a much easier option. So,
okay, let's use a scenario. For example, I'm walking along a job site and I see a floor penetration that hasn't been covered. It's obviously a hazard. So I get out my phone, I bring up the app, and do I then create a new project or do I create a new hazard, or what would typically happen?
So in that scenario, you're just going to create a new hazard. But and what I tell my clients is that, because a lot of the time I get, we just fix it and we move on with the job, which is great, and you should fix it and you shouldn't just walk past it. But sometimes having that trail, that information that, yes, we found this problem, we've taken a photo, we've fixed it, and we've closed that hazard out, that kind of information is very powerful when someone's looking very closely at your business, because it shows that your intention is to do the right thing and you want to record that information. So that tells a very powerful story to someone who's investigating something.
I suppose as well, of course, you don't walk away from it and you always try and repair it. And in this instance, you might get a bit of plywood and cover the hole or whatever it is. But I suppose you've also got to address the problem at heart, don't you? Like, someone has left a hole open there. By you fixing it, you haven't really...
That's the other side, yes.
So one's really being made accountable.
And that's the other reason why you want to record those sorts of hazards, so that next time you have a toolbox talk, you can go back through and say, well, how did we end up with this hole in the floor on site? Who made it, and then why wasn't it covered up before you left that area?
Yeah.
So it gives you a way to not only capture that information, but then be able to use it effectively later on.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, look, I think that pretty much wraps up this episode, unless you had anything else to add there.
No, I think it's just, as long as people understand that the reason you keep your records is so that you can show, should it be required in the future, that you are doing the right thing. And sometimes you just have to accept that we have to keep these things.
And I think I'd like to add as well, one of the big turn-offs, I suppose, from being one of those people on site that did have to fill in all this documentation. Now you don't necessarily have to fill in all this documentation, and you don't have to store folders and all this stuff. You can fill it in on your phone or your tablet, and then it can be saved to the cloud. You can access it from any device, from anywhere. You can share it with people. I'm guessing there's permission settings on it as well.
Yeah, so you can set stuff to, most of my clients, we set them up so that to start with, they can't delete anything accidentally, and things like that. But yes, some people you just want capturing information, other people will learn how to handle it after that.
So effectively what we're talking about here is now we live in a world where maybe 10, maybe even 5 years ago, you walk into a construction site, every single site office I've ever been into has had a bookshelf, and it's been chock-a-block with A4 folders, and every single one of those folders is full of OH&S documentation or some kind of compliance form. Now what we're basically saying is bookshelf's gone, here's your iPhone, problem solved.
That's right. That's where we're at now. And it's great for me from a safety point of view to be able to say that to people that, it's not just about the paperwork anymore. You can actually get this stuff done and get on with your job and not have it all been some sort of interference for you.
If there's not a person out there right now trying to Google your website, then I'll be surprised.
Let's hope so.
All right, that's fantastic. Well, look, let's wrap this up, and then we're going to come back in the following episode, and we're going to talk about the future of OH&S, and this is something that I'm kind of excited about because I'm probably going to throw a curveball at you. So stay tuned, and we'll be back. So if you haven't already, head across to thesiteshed.com and register for our ToolBox Talks, where you'll be regularly sent great episodes just like this straight to your inbox, so you'll never miss one. If you want to join the community, you can head across to thesiteshed.com/members, where for a small monthly fee, you'll get access to regularly updated training material, as well as access to our forum where you can mingle and collaborate with trade-based business owners just like you from all over the world. If you're enjoying this podcast, please head across to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. We greatly appreciate it, and it helps us spread the word and reach the masses. Likewise, if you know anyone that might benefit from the content we create, then please go ahead and share this with them.
You've been listening to ToolBox Talks by The Site Shed. For more great content just like this, head across to thesiteshed.com and join the amazing community of savvy trade-based business owners.